Hello, everyone. This is Taya, the managing editor at Photomasters.
And hi, I'm Ian Plant, pro photographer and founder of Photomasters.
I recently wrote an article about some of the most common photography mistakes, and in this video, we're going to cover some of the most important ones. So, Ian, one of the most important photography mistakes that I see a lot of people making is that they always center their subjects. So they're always at the center of the composition. And in my experience, I feel that really makes a composition look stiff and boring. And if you look at someone's portfolio and their subject is always centered, then it tends to kind of take all the magic away from the photographs. So what is your experience with that?
Well, this is an interesting one because I have sort of a love-hate relationship with this idea that you should be getting the subject away from the center of your composition. And so I think that a lot of photographers, when they first start out with photography, they instinctually just point their camera at their subject and take the picture. And so the subject's always in the middle of the image frame. And this is not typically the most interesting way to showcase your subject. And part of the reason is that the viewer just sort of automatically goes to the middle of the image frame looking for something. And if they find what they're looking for there, then they just move on. The composition doesn't hold their interest over time. And so it's a good idea when you're beginning to experiment with moving your subject off center, because that's going to create more visual movement for the viewer. They're going to go to the center. They're not going to find what they're looking for. They've got to look somewhere else to find the subject. And that is going to create some visual tension and visual energy, and it's going to hold the viewer's interest a little bit more over time. But that said, I love making centered compositions. Centered compositions can actually be really powerful if you know how to do them right. And usually what this means is when you put your subject in the center, you have something off center that will attract the viewer's eye and create that visual tension. So yes, I think it's a good idea when you're just beginning to experiment with off-center subject placement, because I think you'll have compositions that are more dynamic. But as you get better and more advanced as a photographer, then I think you need to start experimenting with centered subjects, but learning how to put something off-center to create that visual tension and to make the composition more dynamic. All right, well, that one was a really good one to start off with. So I'm curious to hear what you've got next for us.
So the next common photography mistakes that I see a lot of people doing is focusing only on one type of photography. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, because if you find a genre that genuinely resonates with you, then of course you're going to want to take lots of photos. But at the same time, I think it's really important, especially once you become more experienced, to get out of your comfort zone and try something new, especially if you know nothing about it, because it will expand your worldview and also hit you with a nice boost of dopamine because it's something that's new and exciting, hopefully. Even if you don't like it at first, I think with time you'll come to enjoy it and will definitely learn something new about photography, and that's always a good thing. What do you think?
Oh yeah, this is a good one. This is the old debate, whether it's better to be a specialist or a jack of all trades. And of course, the old expression is jack of all trades, master of none. So there is that risk if you aren't specializing that you really won't gain mastery in any one particular area that you are exploring. I have done both during my career. I started off specializing just in landscape photography, but I have branched out and I do many different types of photography now. And I actually think that I'm better off for it, because when you try something different, especially if it's outside your comfort zone, then you are learning something new. But most importantly, it often forces you to see the world in a different way. And you can then use those new techniques, those new ways of seeing, to cross over back to your original specialty. And I think you'll be better for it. And so my landscape photography got better when I started shooting wildlife as well. And my wildlife photography got better when I started doing other types of photography. And all of these new techniques and these new things that I learned, this new way of seeing, all of this got translated into basically a rising tide, lifting all the boats of the different photography genres that I was engaged in. And I honestly don't really think of my photography that way. I don't think of there being separate, distinct genres. My photography style is something that I'm hoping sort of shows through with each genre I'm doing. And so I'm not looking to make stunning landscape photos or stunning wildlife photos or stunning travel photos. My goal is to make stunning photos that reflect my personal creative vision. And so whether I'm doing landscape or whether I'm doing wildlife or something else, I'm hoping that that sort of unique take on things that I have or that I'm striving to have is going to be obvious to the viewer. And so I'm just looking to make great photos, no matter what the genre is. And so I think that, branching out, trying other things is definitely the key to improving your creative vision, getting better as a photographer. But it's also the key to exploring and refining your own personal artistic vision.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I just want to quickly add that the phrase you mentioned earlier, jack of all trades, master of none, there's a continuation to that. Jack of all trades, master of none is better than being a master of one. So people cut that part out and just kept that one phrase, and I found that really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate. I definitely think that specializing in something can allow you to go deeper with that particular subject. And definitely there's a lot that you can learn. And I do think there is the potential to be really, really good at one specific thing. So I'm not going to tell people that they've got to do it one way or the other. Whatever way is best for you is the best way to do it. So my personal approach is not to specialize, but to be more of a generalist. Other people might find that they're better off being a specialist. So it's really up to the individual photographer. But I do personally get a big kick out of trying something new. And sometimes, even if it's outside my comfort zone, I discover that I really enjoy doing it. And when I am enjoying what I'm doing, that's when my creative juices really start to flow. And that's when I feel like I advanced my skills as a photographer.
Exactly. I completely agree. And I think also just because you're trying something new doesn't mean that you need to perfect it, doesn't mean that you need to add those photos to your portfolio unless you want to. But feel free to explore and have fun and just take photos of anything that strikes your fancy. I think that's totally fine as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing, is to have fun.
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the last mistake that I want to cover in this video is relying too much on other photographers for inspiration, which is something I struggled with a lot when I first started taking photographs, because I got into photography because I saw a collection of photos that I found inspiring. So naturally, I started to follow those people and I really looked up to them. And it was problematic for me after a while because I was relying too much on their techniques, on their way of doing things, of photographing the world. And I became more of a follower than an independent thinker. And I think it's really important to spend time with yourself, with your camera, and understand what you personally like. Because if you're constantly talking to others, well, there's nothing wrong with that. You can get caught up in their own opinions and preferences as photographers, and that can hinder your creative growth. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the devil is in the details of the phrasing here. So drawing inspiration from other photographers, I think that's a good thing. And I think we all go through that as we're evolving as artists. We start off, we see something that we like and we want to emulate that. And that's great. That's an incredible part of the learning experience. And I think it's a good idea also to have a trusted mentor, to find a photographer that you admire, to learn from them, to learn their approach. So inspiration is great. What I think trips people up is when inspiration is morphed into just being a copycat. And so I think that's where people, I think they lose their own creative vision trying to chase someone else's creative vision. And so I tell people all the time that it's good to learn, and it's good to be inspired. It is good at a certain point to emulate what others are doing. But you have to break free from that if you really want to develop as a creative artist, and you have to explore your own unique creative vision. So it's okay to be inspired by what someone else is doing, but I don't think it's a good idea to try to base your whole portfolio on someone else's personal style or the subjects that they're photographing. Because then you're just basically, you're not really developing your own creative vision, you're just copying someone else's creative vision. And you can be successful doing that. You can make a lot of photos that people like, but they're not really going to be reflective of your own personal style. So I don't believe that you have to ignore everything that's going on around you. You don't have to cease to pay attention to what other photographers are doing. But I think as you develop your own personal style more and more, you will find that you're looking at other photographers less and less for inspiration, and you're drawing that inspiration from within. And I think that's ultimately the place that you want to aim for, and you'll be a better photographer when you get there.
Thank you, Ian, for sharing your thoughts and insights. If you, the viewer, want to find out about some more common photography mistakes, then check out the article in the description.
Yeah, we've got plenty of free and premium resources available on PhotoMasters, including a lot of interviews with other top photography pros. So if you're looking for some inspiration instead of looking to be a copycat, then definitely check out what we've got available on PhotoMasters.
Thank you so much, Ian, for joining me.
My pleasure, Taya, and thank you everyone for joining both of us. It's been a lot of fun. We hope to see you guys again, either virtually or even better, in real life. Bye-bye.